Welcome, welcome, welcome to our village, where we weekly come together to not only learn things about our universe, it can be a person, it can be a time, it can be a place, but we don't come just to learn. We come to inspire, we come to uplift members of our community, which is so important. Today's program, but before we begin, which I'm very excited to share with you today, because it's about a miracle which actually happened to me. So I'm very excited, very delighted. You just can't wait. I just can't wait. I'm sorry. So let's acknowledge members of our community who have done special things this week. First up, we have Erica. And Erica scored in the championship game 3 goals in soccer to lead her team to the league championship. So let's give Erica a shout out. Next, we have Stanley. Stanley scored 2 goals. Stanley's from Vancouver, Canada, and we have members in our community from all over the world. But Stanley scored 2 goals in their junior championship game to lead his team to a championship. Let's give a shout out to Stanley. Next up, we have Keisha. And Keisha was chosen, she's from Lombard, Illinois, and she was chosen to be the Sugar Plum Fairy in their annual Nutcracker Christmas Nutcracker production. So, if you're anywhere near Lombard, Illinois, try to get out and see Keisha's performance in the Nutcracker. Next up, we have Charlie, and Charlie is from Poughkeepsie, New York, and Charlie's won or was recognized for the best, let's see here, it's to be exact, for the best creative writing story, which I think is a very, very special gift and ability. And so let's give a shout out to Charlie. And also, let me encourage you, if there's anything that you do that's special of any kind, send us a note. Drop us a line in the text column there, and we'll try to acknowledge it. And if we don't, if we're not able to, because we get so many, we'll make sure that we send you a badge of recognition so that we acknowledge your special ability, and so that you formally become a member of our community. And lastly, for those people who are not members of our community, we encourage you to join our community, and it's very simple. All you have to do is something kind, something nice, something that helps our world become a better place. Let us know, send us a note of any kind, or you can just put it in the comment section, and we'll make sure that we acknowledge it and get you out a badge of recognition. Thank you. Now, let's begin with our program for today. Hello, friends, and welcome to another week. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our village, where we come together every week to learn things about our universe. It can be a person, it can be a place, it can be a time. But we just don't come to learn things about our universe. We also come to encourage, to support, to uplift members of our community, to try to make the world a better place. So, but before we begin today's program, which I'm very excited about because, well, it's a story about a miracle that happened to me. So I'm so delighted, so excited, I can't wait. But before we begin, we do what we always do, and that is that we acknowledge special achievements of members of our community. So first up, we have Keisha, and Keisha, in the final championship game of her soccer league, scored 3 goals. That's amazing. That's a hat trick. Well, that's a hat trick in hockey, but it's also, I guess, a hat trick in soccer as well, or should be. But she scored 3 goals and led her team to the championship with a final score of 4-1. So we give a shout out to Keisha. I'm sorry, to Erica. Sorry, Keisha. Next up is Keisha. And Keisha was chosen, she's from Lombard, Illinois, and Keisha was chosen to be the Sugar Plum Fairy of their annual Nutcracker. I love nutcrackers. Oh, they're so fabulous. So, but Keisha's going to be the Sugar Plum Fairy, leading role. And if you're anywhere near Lombard, Illinois, let's try to get out and see Keisha in her starring role as the Sugar Plum Fairy. Let's give Keisha a shout out. Next up, we have, let's see, we have Stanley. Stanley from Vancouver, Canada. Yes, we have members from all over the world, but Stanley's from Vancouver, and Stanley scored 2 goals in a championship game in his junior hockey league, and they won their championship. So let's give Stanley a shout out. Next up, we have, let's see, Charlie. And Charlie won an award for the best creative storytelling or writing. And Charlie's from, let's see, Poughkeepsie, New York. Now, if there's, I encourage you in your community to look and see if they have any special awards for performing arts of any kind or even any kind of special ability, and get involved, get engaged, and develop your ability or your interest, whatever it may be. I strongly encourage you to do that. I know that you have some amazing things to do and that you do amazing things, so let's do them more and become as good as we can be in those things that we do special. Now, if there is anything that you do special, please send us a note, let us know, and we'll make sure, if we can't acknowledge it, that you receive a badge of recognition from stating or acknowledging your special ability. And that way you'll be able to wear it around with pride and with joy and be spirited to be the best that you can be. That's what we're asking for, or that's what we would like. So now, are you ready? Are you ready for the greatest story ever told? My story. My story about how I met my best friend and my best pen pal of all time, Harry. But before I get started, how about you get some popcorn? I think you'll enjoy the story a little bit more. I always enjoy stories with popcorn. Also, I got to do a little getting ready myself. So, here we go. So, the story takes place many, many years ago. My family was taking a vacation to Disneyland in California. We were flying out. It was my first time on a plane, so I was already as excited as I'd ever been before. And so when we arrived, we were staying at this hotel. It's a very large, grand hotel. It had many, many floors. It's probably the tallest building I'd ever been in before. And so the first day, they also had a pool on top of the hotel. That was amazing. So the first day I went and I was swimming and playing around in the pool and having all kinds of fun. And when I finished, I was returning to my room, and as I was walking through the lobby area, I heard this loud whistle. I wish I could whistle. I still can't whistle. Can you whistle? Anyway, so I looked around and I saw what looked to be a pirate. And it was a pirate. It was Captain Pete. And Captain Pete called me over, and I walked over and he said, "Hello, I'm Captain Pete, and I give tours to the magical gardens." Well, I love magic, but I didn't care too much for gardens at the time. But he told me about how wonderful it would be if I toured the gardens with him. I told him I'd have to ask my parents, of course, and he said for sure, that he would go with me, actually, to talk to my parents. So we went to my parents, and we had a conversation, and Captain Pete told him how wonderful it would be if I went, and how he would take care of me and watch over me and make sure I didn't get in any kind of trouble or anything, and that I would have a lot of fun. And my parents said for sure. But it cost $1 to go, and my allowance at the time was only 75 cents. But in a month's time, my allowance was gonna be $1, so they said they would give me an advance or start my $1 allowance early. So the next day, Captain Pete came to pick me up that morning, and I got on his bus. And on his bus, I met 3 sisters. There was Dorothy, Alice, and Mulan. And they were visiting from Netherlands, and they were really nice ladies. And we had fun, and we told a few jokes, and we got started to go to the magical garden. So when we arrived at the magical garden, it was already incredible, the things that I saw. I saw all kinds of beautiful, gorgeous plants. I saw elephant ears and roses and irises and lilies and some of those dragon flowers, all kinds of just beautiful, beautiful colors and shapes and sizes. I was already amazed at what I was looking at all around me. So as we were touring and I was walking through, seeing more and more beautiful things, more and more beautiful flowers and plants and trees and all kinds of stuff, I heard a little sound, ruckus maybe, it's probably a better word, and I looked over and I saw this like little path area from where the sound was coming from. So I kind of stepped away and began to walk down this path. The path was on both sides lined with I think they were willow trees and they were blossoming. They were beautiful. And in the trees, there were birds. Some birds were chirping, and some birds were actually even singing, and some birds were crowing. It was just a symphony of sounds, and actually felt like kind of a serenade to me, and welcoming me into the path, into the garden. And so, as I started walking down the path, there were these peacocks. They were dancing along the way. They were beautiful, and their feathers were all up and everything. And the path was all kinds of colors with speckles of shiny rocks inside the path area. So as I walked through the path, and the birds were again singing and making all kinds of beautiful sounds, and so finally, I got to this open area. And there, for the first time, I saw Harry. Harry was this large, black plump, I should say, caterpillar. Well, he also had these large glasses. They were round with white lenses inside. I had never seen a caterpillar with glasses before. And then Harry did the most amazing thing. He called me over. He talked. And so I walked over and for the first time, saw Harry up close talking to me. I was stunned. I was so amazed. And then so Harry said, "Hello, stranger. How are you?" And I said, I couldn't really even talk because I was just so stunned. And Harry introduced himself. He said that his name was Prince Roger Marley. And I said, "Oh, you're a prince." And he said, "No, no, no, no. I'm not really a prince, but my family does treat me as royalty." And he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "My name is Luke Elliot Anu. But my friends call me Boom Boom because when I was little, I used to always walk into things and bump my head and make all kinds of different sounds when I would bump my head into things. So much so that one time I bumped my head and I got a little scar. I actually had to get stitches. You don't ever want to get stitches. So we started talking, and Harry said, "Well, I'm celebrating." They called him Harry, by the way. He said because he had hair all over his body, and um, it just covered his whole body, and that's why they called him Harry. And so he said, "Well, we're celebrating my birthday, and you're welcome to be part of my birthday celebration." And I said, "I would love that, and that my birthday was going to be soon, like only a month away. So that would be great." And he said, "Okay, wonderful." So he said, "But before we get started," he was going to introduce me to his other friends. And so he said, "First, I'm going to introduce you to Amanda." And Amanda was this plump honeybee, and she was flying around, and he told me the story about how Amanda every morning or every day would drop some honey along the leaves in the garden, and Harry would just eat the leaves all day. All he did was really eat most of the day, but occasionally she would drop some honey on him, and I guess that's why maybe Harry was so sweet and loving of a guy. And then next he introduced me to Belle, and Belle was a hummingbird, and she was buzzing all kind of around, and he said that Belle, every morning or every before he would wake, Belle, because Harry slept on his back, and Belle would come and she would tickle him all over his body. And it was so much tickle that Harry would always wake up laughing and full of joy and always just excited about his day. He started out his day just having fun. And then next, he introduced me to Haley, and Haley was a cricket. And Haley was not only his friend, but she also was his teacher, and not only in the sciences like math and reading, but she also taught him how to sing and dance. And so when I met Haley, Haley said, "Oh, do you know how to sing?" And I said, "Of course I know how to sing." And so I started singing, mm, "Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is good." And she said, "Stop, stop, 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 stop. You need some lessons." Okay. I said, "Okay." She said, "But can you dance?" I said, "For sure I can dance." And she said, "Let me see you do this." And she got up and she did this step and went like this. She went, "Choo, choo, choo, choo," and she spun around. Choo. And so I did it. And then Harry tried to do it, but he fell down. But Harry said, "Well, I can't really do that move, but I can do the twist." And then Harry did the twist, and no one could do the twist like Harry, because Harry could twist not only his lower body, but he could twist his upper body as well. It was amazing. He did the best twist ever. And then his next friend that he introduced me to was Kyle. And Kyle was the general ant, and he had this general uniform on. And every night before Harry would go to sleep, Kyle would assemble all the ants in the garden, and they would come and they would get information, and they would protect Harry through the night from the spiders. Harry really didn't like the spiders. So that were his friends. And so then after that, they brought out the cake, and the cake had candles. But before Harry was going to blow out the candles, he called me over and he whispered in my ear, and he said, "I'm going to tell you my wish. It's actually my dream." And he said, "Boom, boom, one day I want to be a pilot or an astronaut. I want to fly." And so I said, "Gosh, Harry, that's a wonderful wish and dream. I hope it comes true." So then Harry blew out the candles, and we just had more fun, and we played games, and it was just a wonderful time as I got to know Harry and all my new friends. But then it got late, and it was time for me to go, and I kind of heard Captain Pete calling me or looking for me. And so Harry and I said goodbye, and we agreed to be best pals and pen pals forever. So it was just wonderful. And so I left and I returned home, and every week or so, I would get a letter from Harry, and I would write Harry a letter. And it was just I was just so excited every week to get my letter and to write my letter to Harry. But then a time came, about, I would say 4 weeks went by, and I didn't get a letter from Harry. And I wrote my letters, but there was no return. I was I was so sad. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a phone. I couldn't call him. And so I was just sad. And then one day, a letter came in the mailbox. And I got the letter. It was beautifully colored. Oh, I think I have it around somewhere. Oh, here it is. It looked like this. It was all kinds of beautiful colors, and it even had a little wing, like on the side. And so I could see it was addressed to me, boom, boom, and it said, "From Prince Rogers Marley, the Magic Gardens." And so I was so excited, and I jumped up and down, and I just couldn't wait to open the letter. So when I opened the letter, and I took it out, and Harry said in the letter that he was sorry that he hadn't written me in a long time, but that once I read my letter, I would understand why, and he would let me know what was happening and what was going on in his life at that time. And so I started reading the letter, and Harry said this. I'll just kind of tell you. He said one day while he was reading, he heard the hurricane sirens. Have you ever heard a hurricane siren before? Well, it's this large sound warning you about bad weather coming. And then all of a sudden, the winds started lifting everything up and everything was flying in the air and the clouds and the sky got dark and and all kinds of things were going on and it started raining real hard and all of a sudden when a strong wind came, Harry fell from his bed and he fell down into a hole in the ground. And as he was falling, he lost his glasses and he fell into this deep hole. And the hole got covered up with all of the brush from everything that was swirling around. And as he fell into the hole, it got dark and scary. And Harry was so afraid. He had lost his glasses, it was dark, and he didn't know what was happening. And so all he could think about was, he ever going to see his friends again? Were the spiders going to get him? And Harry just got afraid and sad, and all he could do was cry. And he cried, and he cried, and he yelled out for help, and he cried, and he cried. He cried until he could cry no more. And his last tear seemed to cover him in this shell of tears, which kind of, hardened around him. Um, and all that was left was a little murmur of his heart as he closed his eyes with his last tear. Well, I guess his yelling out echoed in the winds. And Esmeralda, the witch of the winds, came or heard his cry, and she rushed to him, and she saw that this cry was coming from this hole in the ground. And so she blew a, a light wind over the brush. It had stopped raining by this time, and the storms and the sky was actually very beautiful. And there were rainbows and just beautiful sky and everything. And it was quiet and calm. And so as she blew, the brush was kind of removed from the hole. And at that moment, when enough brush was removed, a ray of sun shot through the hole in the ground and struck the shell of tears that Harry was in. And Harry was awoken. And all of a sudden, he felt life. And the light was awoke in him. And Harry just started reaching every day for the light. As more and more of the brush was removed, more light came through. And Harry just started growing more and more and day by day in the light until he burst out of his shell. And at that moment, Harry recognized that he had survived, that he was alive, that he was a miracle of life. And as Harry sat there and looked around and wondered in total amazement on the eclipse of his metamorphosis, he suddenly realized that his body had changed. And the tears that he was and the shell that he was locked in had kind of attached themselves to his body. And they now just had they were like wings. And at that moment, as Harry was looking about, he saw his glasses. And he walked over to and picked up his glasses and he put his glasses on for the first time. Well, guess what happened? His glasses had gotten stained by the drying leaves. And so when Harry put his glasses on, the stain from the drying leaves gave Harry's sight or vision, color. Harry had never seen color before. All he had ever known was black and white. But now he saw the world in color. And for the first time, Harry saw rainbows and he saw all the colors of the plants. And he was just amazed and so excited with his new life and his new vision and what all had happened. And so at that moment, Esmeralda blew another little light wind, and all of a sudden, Harry was lifted into the air. Yes, Harry was flying for the first time, and he was flying expertly. He was diving and dodging and doing all kinds of things the first time he started flying. So Harry kept flying around, doing all sorts of new tricks every day, getting better and faster, and doing all sorts of new flying tricks and things. And so one day he was flying and he saw these two other butterflies. And they started like chasing one another and flying around and playing tag and just having so much fun. But finally they got a little tired and they decided to take a rest. And when they rested, the two other butterflies said, "Hello, how are you? You're really, really a good flyer." And Harry was like so tickled and he's so happy that he was like such a good flyer. And so the other butterfly said, "What's your name? My name is Leia, and this is my sister, a Heart, and we're twins. And we're really happy to meet you. We always like making new friends." And so Harry said, "Well, my name is Harry." And they said, why is your name Harry?" And Harry started telling them a story of how he was once a caterpillar and now a butterfly. And so when he was a caterpillar, he had all this hair on his body. And so they called him Harry. And so then Hart said, "Well, because you're no longer a caterpillar, maybe you need a new nickname and you don't have any hair anymore." And so Hart said, "I think I know a good nickname." And she said, "I think it should be Harriet." And that was kind of what Hart's name was because she had an H and an A and an R and a T, but she just added the I, the E, and another T to make Harriet. They all loved it. And so they all agreed that Harry's new name should be Harriet. And that's the day that Harry became Harriet. Mm. So they kept flying around again and having a lot of fun. And one day they were flying around and they landed in this bed of roses. And on one of the roses, Harry tasted some honey. And he knew that that honey was from Amanda. And for the first time, he really missed his friends. And so he told Leia and Hart about all of his friends and if maybe they could help him find his friends. And so they agreed. And so they all then started flying around looking for Harry's friends. One day, as they were flying around, Harry, or now Harriet, heard someone singing, and he knew that that was the voice of Haley. And so he scrambled and he flew faster and faster to get to where the sound was coming from. And when he got there, he said, "Haley, Haley, Haley, I've been looking all over for you." And Haley looked at him like, "Who are you?" And Harry, Harriet, started to sing, and Haley said, "Are you Harry?" And Harry said, "Yeah, but I'm now Harriet because I'm now a butterfly." And Haley said, "How'd you become a butterfly?" And Harriet told Haley how she now had become a butterfly. But Haley was so happy to see her long friend, and she missed him so much. And so Harriet then said, "Well, where's everyone?" And Haley said, "Well, I know where everyone is. In fact, we're going to have a party this afternoon. come on, let's go. And so they all together, Harriet, Hart, and Leah, with Haley, went to where their friends were having a party. Harriet's old friends. And so when they got there, Harriet told everyone the story about what had happened. And everyone was so happy. They were so happy to see Harry. They had missed Harry for so long, and they didn't. Well, now Harriet, and they were so happy to see him. But they always knew they were happy for Harry now because everybody knew that Harry always wanted to fly, and now he could fly. And so they had so much fun laughing and playing, and were happy to be back together. And so, before they left, Harriet said, guys, I have a very, very special message that I need to share with you. It's a very important story. And he said to them, he said, I'm going to read it to you because he put it in a letter. And he said, dreams are miracles sleeping. When you awake in the morning light and the dreams of your journey and journey of your dreams, they come true in your living your dream. You will know the miracle you are and the everlasting joy in your being. Gosh, that's a special message, and we all can appreciate that, I think, and we should all remember that. So that was near the end of, oh, that was almost the end of the letter, but Harry ended the letter with this. This is what he said. This is the last part of the letter. He said, someday you may find yourself in a dark place. You may fall, lose a friend, or just not be happy. You may be hopeless, afraid, and fearful what tomorrow might bring. If and when that happens to you, simply remember to close your eyes until you see the light. When you open your eyes, smile and let your light shine. Spread your wings and fly like a butterfly. Wow, that's so special. What a great letter. Gosh, I still so much miss Harry. So that was a letter. That's a good story, I think, for all of us to remember and to be mindful of and keep us happy that we can fly. Okay. So thanks for listening. I hope the story inspired you, and I hope you learned a little bit about the light, and I hope you learned a little bit about how to make sure that your dreams also come true someday. But before I leave, how about we do this? How about we practice one time? So I want you all to close your eyes. And once you see the light, I want you to open your eyes, smile, spread your wings, and fly. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye bye.